It's the Magic Untapped Podcast on MagicUntapped.com, YouTube, and your favorite source for podcasts.
Everybody, how are you doing, Barry, since you can actually answer me?
Yeah, it's kind of hard for the listeners to answer, but they're more than welcome to speak into their phones or their laptops or whatever they're doing. But I am doing actually surprisingly all right. Definitely looking forward to what should and hopefully will be a peaceful thing on January 20th. We have vaccines rolling out for this COVID stuff. So I'm hopeful. I'm in good spirits. Jim, how are you?
I am also doing pretty well. Looking forward to hopefully a better future and just trying to keep myself from losing my mind in the meantime, just occupying myself.
Yeah, staying sane is definitely a prerequisite these days. But let's talk about something else that we're looking forward to, and that is Kaldheim, the next Magic the Gathering set, pre-release at the end of the month. The set releases at the end of the first week of February. That would be, I'm going off memory here, I believe February 5th is the release date, the street date on that. Jim, are you excited?
Yes, I am excited. This last set sort of passed me by for a variety of reasons, mostly revolving around the crew I locally play Magic with. But Kaldheim, I think that's going to be where I really dive back in, and it looks like a very fun and exciting set.
I'm kind of with you on that. The last standard set, the Zendikar Rising, I definitely was not really looking forward to when it came out. Then it released. I bought a few packs. I'm like, yeah, this is kind of what I thought it was going to be. And I kind of left it alone. I did spend a little too much money on Commander Legends, but that's not a standard level set by any means. But Kaldheim, definitely one of the more hyped standard sets I've seen in a while. And I'm also looking forward to it. We have a bunch of cards being spoiled. We have the Pathway Dual Lands. We have some gods, some planeswalkers, just some cool shenanigans. Jim, do you have one specific card that's really standing out to you for any reason whatsoever?
There is one that I had in mind, and I just really like the flavor of cards like this and what they bring to a game. The card that I had my eye on is Quake Bringer, which is... It's a 5/4 for 5, or if you foretell it, it's for 4, which is amazing on its own. But also, it has two abilities. One, your opponent cannot gain life. And two, at the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, even if Quakebringer is in your graveyard, so long as you have a giant in play. It is like, I love these sort of ticking time bomb kinds of cards, even if I'm terrible at playing them, because I love what they do to the feel of a match. And this one, it just seems really powerful and really difficult to get rid of. So I'm looking forward to seeing how people play with that.
Well, in a way, you almost can't get rid of it aside from exiling it or bouncing it back into a player's hand because of that. Like you said, that 2 damage component happens whether it's in play or in the graveyard. Again, there is that rule where there must be a giant in play, but in theory, this is not going to be your only giant. At worst, you're going to run multiple copies of Quakebringer, wouldn't you?
I mean, if you can stack several of them on there, it just hastens the timer, basically. Imagine losing 4 or 6 life every single upkeep.
Right, and I like the fact that it kills off life gain. I do like the foretell. I really think that makes the card even that much more versatile. You can foretell it early, exile it from your hand early, and then when you want to, can afford to, or need to bring it out, there it is.
Mm-hmm. It seems very easy to play and very hard to deal with.
And as for me, card I'm really looking forward to is Valki, God of Lies, partially because it's Loki. Come on. He's a shape-shifting god. It's Loki. But Avengers love aside, the card itself is actually pretty good on face value. And I say on face value because there's a front and the back to this card. This is one of those cool dual-sided cards. We'll get to that in a minute. But Valki, God of Lies, for black and 1, it's a legendary creature, god. It's only a 2/1. but it's a 2-drop, so that's okay. And it says, when Valki enters the battlefield, for each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card they revealed this way until Valki leaves the battlefield. Second ability, you pay X, choose a creature card exiled with Valki with converted mana cost X. Valki becomes a copy of that card. This is going to be really fun in multiplayer formats like Oathbreaker and EDH. This could be also very powerful in 1v1. And I just really like what you can do with it. It's even if it was just black 1 for 2/1, you get to exile a creature card or any card from an opponent's hand. That's not half bad, but then you throw in the shape-shifting part, and that's also pretty darn good. But then, throw on top of that, it's, like I said, double-faced. On the backside, you have Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter. Of course, Tybalt, the often maligned planeswalker, often ridiculed planeswalker. But it's a bit expensive at 7 mana, black, red, and 5 others. But it actually has some good power to it, too. First off, it enters the battlefield with an emblem that says you may play cards exiled with Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter, and you may spend mana as though were of any color to cast those spells. The reason that's important is because even if Tybalt leaves, you still have the emblem, so you can still do the cool shenanigans. It's +2, exile the top card of each player's library, yours and your opponent or opponents. -3, exile target artifact or creature. And then -8, exile all cards from all graveyards and add 3 red, which then you can spend as if it's any color. But the fact that it has that emblem that lets you cast these spells, have access to these spells, either way, whether Tybalt's in play or not, I think is really cool. And what's even nicer still is on one side you have a 2-drop for early game. On the other side, you have a 7-drop for late game. I really like the versatility of the card on both sides.
Yeah, this I really like both sides of this card sort of playing to the same angle, which is just taking your opponent's deck and using it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's something, just turn the tables on someone who's like stacked their deck. It's a lot of really powerful stuff.
And I'm going to be very interested to see what happens with the card on 1v1 play, especially when Paper Magic starts ramping back up as COVID ramps down, which hopefully will be sooner rather than later. But one thing that people have been playing a lot of since COVID's kind of turned everything topsy-turvy in a timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly sort of way is Magic the Gathering Arena. It's got a much larger player base. People are playing more often. Because, like I said, they can't play in paper, and pretty soon people will get to play it even more often as it releases onto mobile, starting as an early release title on Android. Jim, I think this is a nice bit of news. What do you think?
I am reservedly excited for this news. Like, I love the idea of Arena coming to more formats and being able to play against more people who will destroy me in an instant. Though I don't know, I have some concerns about putting this in a mobile format, I suppose. Like, my first concern obviously is I guess usability and especially readability. It's like, here's a phone. It's roughly the size of a Magic card, maybe a little larger, the size of a single Magic card, and you're going to have who knows how many of these in play at one time. Yep. I think yours is a little larger.
A little longer, at least.
But like, we're going to have, I don't know, we could have 10, maybe 15 or more cards in play at one time, and are we going to be able to effectively process all this information on a small device like this? That's one worry that I have.
Well, the question is, will you be able to zoom in, too? Can you do the pinch and squeeze and push and be able to zoom in and out of the play field? But then again, what if you tap a card? How does that work? I'm sure these are things that I would hope the developers are thinking about, especially considering how small of a screen it is. And honestly, sometimes even on my computer screen, things get kind of small when things get kind of busy.
You would, I think, if you were a developer for this mobile version, you would have to completely rethink the entire UI. Like, you can't just take the current thing and shrink it down. You have to think of something entirely different that's going to make this feasible on mobile.
And yet still look and feel like Arena on laptop. Keep in mind, there is supposedly cross-platform support between PC and mobile, and I'm assuming between Android and iPhone as well. Although the iPhone version is not going to come out until later this year, according to what Wizards of the Coast is saying. And even then, it's only coming out on a special subset of Android phones to begin with. First of all, you have to make sure your phone meets some decent specs for a mobile device. You have to have Android version 6.0, which is Marshmallow. You need at least 4 gigs of RAM. They want your graphics API to be an OpenGL ES 3.0. You need to have texture compression of ETC2, and you need chipsets that are either the Kirin 970, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845, or the Exynos 9810. And if you know what the heck I just talked about, then you are a much smarter person than me. I'm just reading it off a piece of paper here as if I know what some of this stuff means. What are the odds that the average person who goes, oh, let me go download Arena on my Android, what do you think, or the chances they're going to know to look this stuff up? And then if they look it up, what are the odds they're even going to know what they're looking at as far as device minimum specs?
I think the chances for most people, it's probably like 10%.
Huh.
This is like, the issue is that mobile games, they are not like PC games where people are sort of trained to know that you need to have a certain level of specs. People who use mobile, they're sort of expecting to just download something and have it work.
And just run with it.
Right. And so now once you've read those specs, I'm actually really concerned that like a large number of people are going to be locked out of this initially, first of all. Second of all, the people who can download it, I feel like maybe it's not going to run all that well, at least not as well as on PC, that's for sure.
I share that concern. Now, thankfully, Wizards of the Coast, while they say they cannot provide an all-inclusive list of all the supported Android devices, they did provide a small list of ones on which they know, Wizards knows, the game should run on, and we have that complete list on the Magic Untapped website. But just for those listening here on the podcast, a few of the ones on the list, I'll just read them right off here. The Asus ROG Phone 3, Galaxy Note 10 Plus, Google Pixel 3. We have was it Huawei? Is that how you pronounce it? Huawei?
I think so, yes.
The Huawei Mate 20 Pro, 30 Pro 4G, 30 Pro 5G. There's also the LG G7 Thin Q, Motorola One 5G. A number of the Samsung Galaxies can run it. They list 5 different ones of those. 2 different models, the XZ2 and XZ3 of the Sony Xperia. So there is a list, but it's not an exhaustive, all-inclusive list. So if your phone's not on that list and you don't know the exact specs of your phone, well, you might be SOL, at least for the time being, until Wizards comes out with other versions, either ramped up versions or ramped down versions for devices that might not be able to otherwise handle the software.
I would say if you got your phone in the past couple of years and it was good when you got it, you can probably run Arena, but if you're outside of that window, I don't know, I would say all bets are off.
And when it does come out for iPhone, reportedly, as I mentioned before, later this year, I am a little curious as to how far back support goes, or if they're just going to run with the latest model and say, okay, iPhone 12 and anything after it, it'll run on. But if you're on 11, 10, whatever, well, you're left in the dust.
That would cut off. I don't even know how many people that would cut off. But
it would cut me off.
A lot. It would cut off a lot of people for sure.
Yeah, indeed, it probably would. But overall, though, the prospect of playing Arena on a mobile device, and keep in mind that includes tablets, which have larger screens, but the prospect of being able to play Arena on the go, on the shuttle to and from work, or on vacation, or or even at the airport waiting for a plane once travel becomes a thing again. I do like the prospect of it.
Yeah, I do too. I'm definitely going to be trying it out, but if it's not done really well, I think it could really turn people off. So I'm hoping they've invested a lot of time into this.
So, yeah. All right, now we come to the part of the show, brand new part of the show, to where we kind of do a thing called an interview with Jim. You've heard of interviews, right?
The name is familiar. Can you tell me what this interview is?
Well, this interview is a thing where we bring on a guest, such as, for example, former Magic the Gathering judge Inari. Inari, how are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
And now, Jim, we're going to ask Inari a few questions and then play a fun little game at the end we're calling Magic Related. Magic Related is a game where, Inari, we will ask you some questions that are Magic related, but not specifically related to Magic the Gathering. But first of all, you said,
Okay.
yeah, like we said, former Magic the Gathering judge. How did you get in and interested in becoming a judge for our listeners who might want to go into it themselves?
Actually, you're a big part of that. When I moved down to California from up in Alaska, came down here and got a real feel for the more competitive scene, more so than the basement scene that I was with when I was living in Alaska. And so I got more into the store aspect, and I met Sean Kednitze, who was a level 3 at the time, who eventually became a level 4. And he kind of led me on that journey of helping stores out. And I'm a pretty big extrovert, and so being able to head up events and to kind of MC events really spoke to me. So that just kind of to push me to hold bigger events, and becoming a judge was the easiest way of doing that.
And going off that, and Jim, feel free to have a follow-up of your own as well. But following into what you just said, what are some of the things you learned in the years you were judging?
Oh, so many things. I mean, you were required to keep up on all the rules. You know, every set came out with another set of new interactions and things like that. Events will never go as smoothly as you want them to be. Players, for the most part, 99% of them want a fair and honest game, and will do everything in their power to make it easier for the judges. Very rarely are you going to find a super rules lawyer or something like that where they're really trying to bend the rules, or they don't have a good grasp on the rules, because at the tournament level, many people generally have a really good handling of the rules. So 90% of the time, 99% of the time, very rarely do you actually have to make a serious judge call. But when you do, it can be really hard to, when you look down at a person and be like, dude, you got a game loss, or hey, you didn't de-sideboard your deck before this, so you get a game loss, or you get a round loss, or even things like you're not in the seat at the beginning of a match. And it's like, and it sucks being able to tell a person, because there's always extenuating circumstances, but rules are rules, and you have to disappoint somebody by saying, you're down the game already.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, back when in-store, I'm going back to ancient history, when in-store play existed, nothing too set specific, but what were some of the more common questions you would get regardless of the set, regardless of the tournament?
I would say because the store that we did, you always did way more pre-releases than you did any other event. Like, we ran PTQs, we ran Grand Prix, not Grand Prix, but like Grand Prix qualifiers, stuff like that. most of the events we run were FNMs or pre-releases. Pre-releases were really fun, a lot of people. Only problem is so many people would come in and be like, well, I have all these cards from my midnight release or some, can I use those? Because everybody's really excited about using their cards. Like, no, you gotta put them away, stuff like that. General rules-wise, Two-Headed Giant is a giant mess. And rules that seem commonplace in regular standard play are all of a sudden, like, you really have to rules lawyer things that say each player or each opponent, or attacking each opponent and who can block for who and stuff like that. So I would say most of the time they were Two-Headed Giant questions for some of the more common ones.
I was wondering something. How often, as a judge, did you get into a situation where you just didn't know the answer to a rules question? And if that happens, what do you do?
Oh, often. Well, not often, but one of the really important aspects of being a judge is knowing that you don't know everything. And there will always be interactions that will either stump you or that you haven't come across before. So the judge system is actually really cool. Like, there's always an active text community, so that if you don't know, you can text either people that have had experience, or throw it out to the board real quick and be like you could in the middle of an event be like, hey, what's the ruling on this, or something like this, and you will get a response. And not only will you get a response, but they'll tell you, like, okay, well, this is rule 36C or something like that. Well, they'll actually be able to state where it is and how it's supposed to be resolved. So.
I've been at Grand Prix and I've had to call judges before, and every now and then I'll ask them a question and they'll look at me like I have two heads for about 2 seconds. And then next thing I know, they're on their phone. Are they texting the question to somebody, or are they actually looking it up in an app or on a website or something?
I mean, there are apps that have the full rules and the comprehensive guide and stuff like that. So it's very possible that they're looking for the exact how to resolve an issue. Like, they might know the answer, they might know what to do, but then resolving how to explain it to the players themselves is also in there. And so they kind of lay it down to where you can explain and be like, okay, this is the ruling, this is what I'm saying, here's how we're going to resolve it.
And in layman's terms, for idiots like me.
Well, and I mean, I can't say at Grand Prix level, but I know, general FNM and pre-release, most of the, if you don't have to lay down a ruling, the easiest way to get people to understand a card is just to tell them to read the card. Because while it's in their hand, they have a feeling of what's going to happen, but if there's any interaction between when they try to cast it and stuff, people tend to stumble. And so you tell them, okay, well, what's the card say? And they read it slowly, and then they read whatever, the other player's playing in response or something like that.
And the light bulb goes off.
And they read it, and all of a sudden it'll click. Unless you're dealing with a really new player or somebody that has, hasn't had a whole lot of experience. Unless you're dealing with somebody who hasn't had a whole lot of experience, just reading the card and actually laying it down word for word, it'll click in their head and they'll be like, oh, never mind, I understand.
And now with keeping that comment in mind, as we have COVID vaccines coming out now, ideally maybe within the next X number of months, normal life might be able to start resuming. And that would also mean in-store play might start resuming maybe sometime later this year. What should players keep in mind as they go back in and get reacquainted with in-store play?
There's going to be a whole lot of people that are excited, but you'll have to realize 2 or 3 sets will have been released since this whole lockdown, maybe even 4 sets, depending on when it does. And that's 4 sets of people that, if they haven't been playing on Arena or something like that, will not have a whole lot of experience with the last 2 or 3 sets, which is a whole lot of rules interactions and a whole lot of I don't know how things are gonna play out. So I would just ask people to be really patient with new players or even people that haven't been playing for this whole time. You know, people are going to go back to drafting if they haven't drafted in a while, or you know, they're drafting the new Kaldheim set that's going to be coming out whenever. So I would just ask people to be patient and really value the time, because you know, I think we've seen a lot of people not enjoying Magic a lot because they haven't been able to actively play. You know, if you're bubbled with a few people that know how to play, you know, Commander, like I'm lucky enough that both my wife, my roommate, and my son all play Commander, so that we've been able to still play paper Magic, and I play Arena, my son plays Arena, so being able to enjoy it. And so when it comes back to live paper Magic with strangers and new people, it's going to be nice, and it might be frustrating for people that haven't been playing or just starting. So I would just ask people to be way more patient with people, because we all miss it. We really, really miss it.
Definitely. And patience is a virtue that all too few people seem to have sometimes. But we didn't bring you here, Inari, just to talk about the ins and outs of judging and the future of in-store play. We also brought you here to play a game I have right here on my piece of paper called Magic
Excellent.
Related. Like we mentioned, we're going to ask you some questions, 3 trivia questions, all multiple choice, all related to Magic, but not necessarily Magic the Gathering. And I'm sure Jim will have a few smart aleck remarks to throw in here from time to time. So we're going to ask you about the magic of Harry Potter.
Excellent.
I'm going to be playing along with this one.
So first off, question number 1, you get 2 out of 3 right, and you win 1 internet point, Inari. So yes, gotta love those internet points. So made popular by the character Neville Longbottom, portrayed by actor Matthew Lewis in the Harry Potter movies, the slang term long-bottomed means what, according to Urban Dictionary? Is it A, when a person goes from being a weak, nerdy, or unattractive person and then suddenly becomes remarkably attractive? B, it's a term describing a person who has a narrow but long bottom or hindquarters? Or C, it's a hip new term describing the economy during a recession?
I'm going to go with A, just because I know that the actor got really jacked afterwards. So I think it's that transformation from nerd to hottie.
Yeah, you know, Matthew Lewis really, really did go through one heck of a metamorphic change over the course of those films, didn't he? Well, yes, it was A. Jim, was that what you were thinking?
That was also what I was thinking, yes. He did the opposite of a Rupert Grint, more or less. Sorry to Rupert Grint, but you did not grow into that role as the movies went on.
No, not at all. Okay, well, good job on that first one, Inari. Moving on to question 2. When recording the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban audiobook, Stephen Fry found that he had trouble saying the words pocketed it, as in the phrase, quote, Harry pocketed it, due to a stutter. He asked author J.K. Rowling if he could rephrase it. She said he had to say it as written, but did do one other thing. What did she do? A, she refrained from using the phrase in future Harry Potter books. B, she made a point to use the phrase multiple times in each Harry Potter book thereafter. Or C, she told him he can use an American accent for that phrase and that phrase only if it made it easier for him to say.
Wow. Is she spiteful enough? No, because he would. Oh.
England's beloved
You know what?
Stephen Fry.
I'm just going to say the American accent, C.
You're going to see the American accent. Jim, where are you going
Yep.
with?
I'm going to go with A on this one. Like,
You're gonna go with
she's
A?
very spiteful now, but I don't know if she was then.
Gentlemen, no, it was B. She made a point to use the phrase multiple times in each Harry Potter book thereafter. But here's why. So Stephen Fry was having trouble pronouncing the words because of a stutter. So she figured if a grown man is having trouble with the words, children must also be having trouble with the words. At least this is the story I've been told. And so she put it in excess so that the children would have more opportunities to overcome the stutter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did she consult with a linguist before doing this?
Probably not. Probably not. That's the magic of Harry Potter for you. And so your third question, Inari, you get this right. You win our silly little game. So apparently, some of the movie's adult stars were regular pranksters, pulling a number of practical jokes on other members of the staff and cast, including what? A, during filming of a scene in the third film, in which all of Hogwarts' students are sleeping with sleeping bags in the Great Hall, director Alfonso Cuarón, Michael Gambon, who played Dumbledore, and Alec Rickman, Snape, hid a remote control-operated whoopee cushion in Daniel Radcliffe's sleeping bag. B, during the first movie, Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy, put purple food dye in the prop polyjuice potion that Harry, Ron, and Hermione drank, which turned the actors' tongues all purple, causing them to reshoot the scene the next day. Or C, during one scene with Daniel Radcliffe, Sir Kenneth Branagh, who played Gilderoy Lockhart, kept making small farting noises during Radcliffe's lines to see if anybody would notice.
Like during the filming?
During filming. For C, yeah.
I'm going to go A, the farting sleeping bags.
You're going with the whoopee cushion, the sleeping bag. All right, Jim, you got one for this? Do you agree with Inari?
I sort of hope all three of them are true, but I'm going to say B on this one.
You're going to say B. Well, I got good news for one of you and bad news for the other. The good news is, Inari, you did win our game. It was A. Dumbledore, Snape, and the director did put a remote-controlled whoopee cushion in Daniel Radcliffe's sleeping bag. And what makes it even better is Radcliffe insisted on his sleeping bag being next to a girl who was a part of the cast who he had a crush on at the time. So you better bet that went over well. All right, Inari, thank you very much for playing our silly magic-related game and for joining us here on the Magic Untapped Podcast. You have a good one, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, Jim, it's about that time again to talk about winners and losers. But first, I want to give a special thank you and shout out to our one and only Patreon subscriber, one and only Lino Hernandez. Lino, you've been with us for quite a long time so far, and we greatly appreciate your support. And the listeners out there, if you want to be like Lino and support the channel, hop onto patreon.com/Magic Untapped, throw a $1 or $5 into our tip jar, and you just might hear your name mentioned here on the podcast or on one of our weekly videos on YouTube. Jim, sounds like a pretty good deal, doesn't it?
Sure does. I would say everyone who subscribes to our Patreon is a big winner.
Everybody is a big winner, especially when they support the channel on Patreon. But let's talk about other winners, starting with our top 3 winners of the past week. That would be in order. We have Jeweled Bird as our third biggest winner. It went up 469%, going from a paltry $12.75 to $72.50. That would be the Arabian Nights original printing of Jeweled Bird. In second place, we have Rise the Exiled from Morning Tide. It went up 539% over the past week, going to $23.77 from $3.72. And our big winner would be Urnum Jin, the printing from Arabian Nights, going up 776% from $350 to $3,065. Huge jump. Jim, I kind of think I see what's going on here, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
I think with the big winner going to a $3,000 car, that's got to be like a severe rarity situation, sort of a speculation situation, because it's hard to say that a card is going to have $3,000 worth of game value. Actually,
especially a card like Arnhem Gen, which has a number of other printings, none of them worth even a fraction of the old price, let alone the new price. But I do have one thought. The Arnhem Gen, Arabian Nights. The Jeweled Bird, also Arabian Nights. I think what we're seeing here, at least for the most part, is a collectability of the original printings. Arabian Nights, first expansion in Magic the Gathering. First time these cards were printed. Jeweled Bird, I believe, has only been printed one other time. That was in Chronicles. Arnhem Gen has, like I mentioned, printed a handful of other times. And
it's got 5 different printings.
Five different printings, yeah, including Chronicles, Onslaught, what have you. Now, the jump, the 775% jump, I think that's more of a spike. But I do think there's some interest here in the fact that they're the first printing, because neither card, really none of these cards that we just mentioned are reserve lists. So they could be printed again.
That's true. I guess some of them they have been printed again many times. I guess I wonder if there are other cards in Arabian Nights that have been also growing in value. They just didn't make it onto our top winners list this week.
Oh, there probably are. And as I look down the list of others, I do see further down the list Aladdin's Lamp, Sorcerer's Queen, Bazaar Baghdad. So yeah, there are a handful of others on this week of list that have gone up. Just they didn't crack the top 3. The other card that did crack that top 3, Rise the Exiled, which is from Morningtide, as I mentioned. It's a 3/2 for green and 2 legendary creature elf warrior. But the reason I think this is going up is because of Kaldheim having a lot of elves, and elves that care about green and black, because Rise the Exiled has a black ability that's black, sacrifice an elf, regenerate Rise the Exiled. So I think these are EDH players, and perhaps some people want to experiment with the card in Modern.
That's possible too. I mean, looking at the spoilers for Kaldheim, I'm already seeing like one mythic green-black elf, Tyvar Kel, that's going into probably would play well with other elves like Reese the Exiled. Is it Reese or Rise? I don't know.
Reese, rise, and we rise up. Sorry. Yeah, moving on. Let's talk about some losers. Our 3 biggest losers, all 3 of them are from Kaldheim, and they're all the special versions of cards. We have in 3rd place Halvar, God of Battle, which on the backside is Sword of the Realms. This is the showcase version. It's gone down from about $40 to $13, a loss of about 67%. Then we have Pyre of Heroes, the extended art version. That has gone from $51 down to $14, a drop of almost 73%. And then we have Toski, Bearer of Secrets, the showcase frame, the gorgeous showcase frame. That's dropped from about $35 to $4.50, a drop of slightly more than 87%. Jim, I think we're in agreement as to why this is happening.
Yeah, I think so. People just, as more elements of Kaldheim get revealed, the overall price of specific cards are going to end up coming down as interest starts spreading out among more of the set.
Right. I think it's all just the hype, just going down, not on the set as a whole, but on specific cards. As, like you just said, other cards get spoiled, other cards come out, and the interest just simply moves to new cards.
Yeah, I mean, none of these cards that are losers, none of them were among our favorites from the Kaldheim spoilers so far. So.
No, that doesn't mean they're not bad cards. They're definitely worth mentioning, like Pyre of Heroes. I believe we mentioned when it first came to light in last month's podcast. It is very much an interesting card, but yeah, I think it's just the interest is leveling off with all the other cards that have been spoiled since.
I think you're right, and what I also find very strange is the idea of assigning such values to these cards that are not actually available anywhere yet. This is just
speculation.
Like the purest of speculation. It's like how can you properly determine a card's value, a brand new card, if nobody's been able to play with it yet?
Again, like you said, speculation, people dreaming of what a card can do or what a card is. And then, it not happening or not happening the way people thought. So and part of it's just market correction too. So nothing really too amazing or extravagant with the losers this time around. But yeah, those winners, definitely a little interesting with the Arabian Nights cards.
Yeah, I agree. That was a surprising bit of synergy there.
Yeah. Well, we have reached that time, Jim. It's time to go ahead and start shutting down this episode of the Magic Untapped podcast. We had a great guest with the Magic Judge Inari, and great having you on and chatting some Magic with you. And let's try to do it again next month as we get another guest lined up and have yet another wonderful Magic Untapped podcast on MagicUntapped.com and Magic Untapped on YouTube. I have been your host, Barry White.
I have been your co-host, Jim Avery.
You guys take care, be safe, and keep having fun playing Magic.
Okay. See you, everyone.